people who cannot make it. But yeah, so again, this is Palmer Casteel and then Hope and Phil McQuillin, and then they're going to be basically just discussing, their paths to graduate school and just like some tips for you guys. Did you want to open in prayer and then, then we can jump into questions?
All right. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay. Dear God, I just thank you so much for this day, Lord. I just thank you for this privilege that we have to come together. And I just thank you that we have PPC, Lord, a place where we can get a strong foundation in your word. And just that we will learn all that we can while we can. And just use the resources we have tonight, Hope and Phil and Palmer. Just that we will be able to go out and serve you like for you. So that's this meeting through God, and in your name I pray. Amen. Amen.
Okay, so you guys' choice, I said, did you guys just want to each individually talk about your kind of like journey? I don't know, like 5, 10, however long you want to take, and then we can do questions. We have like just a few, and then whoever else we have like preset questions, and then whatever anyone wants to ask. Is that good? Yeah, whoever wants to start, I guess, and then you can introduce yourself.
I think Phil should go first. He's the oldest. He should go first.
Okay, Phil, you're first.
Okay. All right. So I'm just talking about like how I got to where I'm at. Cool. So yeah, I went to PCC like all of the wonderful people. I got my pre-med degree there. It didn't start as smoothly as I wanted to. I was homeschooled, so the adjustment to college life was a little rough. So I actually ended up like freshman year, I had like a 3.01 GPA. But then I just progressively got more interested in what I was learning with like science and adjusted my study strategies and ended up graduating with honors, like a 3.69 GPA. So I was able to bring my GPA up significantly from there. Through that process, though, was around junior year, right around when we were supposed to be taking our MCAT and applying for med school, when I started to like reevaluate what I actually wanted to do with my life. A lot of different things were happening at that time, and I was going through a lot, and just kind of took a step back and said maybe med school isn't the direction I want to go. I had the grades to get into med school at that point, but I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. So I went back home and I met a awesome PA who went to our church, and he said, "Hey, come shadow me." And so I said, sure. And I went and shadowed him for a couple of weeks, and then was able to shadow PAs at my hospital. In addition to shadowing doctors actually at the same time, because I got the shadowing hours up for that, because I was still thinking about going the med school route. And from that experience, I just realized that, this is really the direction that the Lord was leading me. And it was actually kind of perfect because I had worked my whole time while I was an undergrad as a patient care technician and certified nurse assistant at Alaska's largest hospital in the progressive care unit. And that clinical care experience really significantly helped out my application for PA school and kind of made me the perfect applicant for PA school. So when senior year rolled around, when I actually met Hope, and she was thinking about going to med school, I was able to talk to her about my plans to go to PA school. And then I started working towards that plan, took my GRE that summer, and then applied to med school, put in my application to CASPA, which is very similar to AMCAS, or what is it? AACOMAS, yeah. Which I had actually filled out AACOMAS before, because like I said, I was thinking about going the med school route, but I hated that application process. And then they got into like 7 PA schools or something like that. And then turned down a whole bunch of other interviews because I didn't have the money to fly out to those. And then ended up just settling upon getting into UT, because that's
settling.
Well, I didn't mean it that way, but I chose Toledo because Hope also got into their master's program there. So then, yeah.
I guess I can pick up from here then. Also, can you guys, is it like really echoey? Could you just be honest? Okay, so we're going like this. I appreciate the honesty. Okay, so I'm trying to make it clear. But yeah, so I was like the over obsessive pre-med that like never did anything fun, and Palmer can testify. I
What? No way.
yeah, way. I was really boring. Actually, funnily enough, my mom told me if I spent every Friday night in the library, I would never find a man. And I was like, that's not what I'm in school for, Mom. And then guess where Phil asked me out? The library.
I
So
knew you would be there every
there
Friday
is hope
night.
for all of you. Just search in the library. That's all you got. So yeah, I always had the plan of, I want to say always. I started as a pre-nursing major. After my first semester, did well, but really wasn't like, I don't know. I knew I wanted to do something different than nursing, so I went on and switched to pre-med. And from there on, it was great. I will say PCC, like I'm sure Palmer can agree, and Phil, because I know he agrees with me, but PCC prepares you really well. I don't know if it's just because you have to be so good at time management with like chapel and church, and you have so many extra things. By the time you get out, you're like, whoa, like I have my time management down. I'm very disciplined. So like, I was a good student. I don't know where I'm going all over the place. Sorry, guys. But I was a really good student. So grades weren't a bad thing for me. It wasn't something holding me back from my application. However, when I took my MCAT, I really messed up the biology section, like really bad. Like when I say really bad, I mean 37 percentile, which is not good. So overall, my MCAT score wasn't really bad, but when you look at an MCAT score, you want a balanced one, and mine was not balanced. And I had applied to, I think, 12 schools and got one interview and subsequently one wait list. So like my whole application journey was not what I had expected. Really humbling experience, but it's honestly probably the best thing that could have happened. No, definitely the best thing that could have happened to me. I retook my MCAT, got a significantly better score. I did a master's program, so I'm sure if you've looked around, there are plenty of these programs, but they're 1-year masters. I did mine in medical sciences at University of Toledo. It really prepared me. I don't even know where like I would be in my mindset had I not done that before my first year, because it's so overwhelming to get to your first year of school and you're like, ah. So that master's really helped. And the master's also had an anatomy lab, gross anatomy. So you already dissected an entire body before you've even gone to med school. So those kind of things really helped me. So if you're like, I don't know if I'll be ready for med school right out of undergrad, no one ever feels ready. So don't let that be like the biggest indication. But if you're really like, and maybe you need a GPA booster, that's another good option. And it was a great experience for me. And then obviously I got in second round of applications. And here I am now and thriving.
Cool. I'll go. So it's funny that me and Hope are in the same video call, because me and her are on two completely opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to our approaches to school. I was doing anything but school during PCC. I was doing fine arts productions with Matthew McIntyre. I was playing ping pong like every night. I did do my studies, but like I made sure to take time to do fun things. I was very much a laid back, like I enjoyed what I did in pre-med, and I was like, I can get into med school or I won't get into med school. Like I was kind of just trusting Lord of where I wanted to go, because I'm very content with the sciences. I would have been content going into say a biochem field or a field that's not medicine. Like my whole heart wasn't set on doing medicine. But all right, Lord, wherever you lead. So I had a very like non-traditional application. I applied very late. I don't think I submitted my app. So I'm all what not to do. But somehow the Lord blessed me and I used the wrong formula and still got the right answer. So I don't think I submitted my application to all the schools till like November. So every school had like already filled their seats. But I also only had 24 shadowing hours, but it kind of lined up because COVID was during that time, so it worked out because I generally it's hard to find dogs to shadow. But I enjoyed what I did at PCC. And so, all right, I want to do medicine. And I was just kind of like applying. And I was like, all right, Lord, if you want me to go to med school, or into the med field, just let me get accepted because med school is hard to get into. And then I got a pretty decent MCAT score. And I applied to schools that I knew I was a good fit for. I applied to schools that matched my MCAT. I applied to all DO, so I did not apply to any MD school. So I went fully, mainly because I didn't want to fill out both applications because that's a lot of paperwork. So I applied to audios, and Lord bless me, and I got 5 interviews and accepted into 4 medical schools. And so it's hard making choices and choosing like what medical school you want to go to. But I ended up doing Liberty. And as Hope said, PCC really prepares you for medical school. For us, what they're doing, because coming into med school, I didn't feel like there was a huge, I guess, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die because of how much stuff we have to do and everything. Like, PCC prepares you pretty well. So I applied in November. I got my first interviews, I want to say in January. And then I settled on Liberty in July, and the school started the last week of July. So I had 3 weeks to find myself an apartment and where to live and everything like that. So it was a wild ride for the application process, but now I'm here. I'm absolutely loving medical school. You get to learn everything that you love learning, and a lot of things you don't like to love learning. But if you love science and you love helping people, I'm loving every second of medical school. And that was kind of my journey. I went straight from PCC to medical school, and so yeah, I guess all 3 of us, we haven't stopped doing school now for the past 6 or 7 years. We've just been chugging. So yeah, that's kind of my story of going into medical school.
Perfect. Thank you guys for sharing your story. So we had we had an Instagram poll, so a few people asked questions. So do you mind if we ask you those first, and then we'll open it up to whatever anybody else has? Okay, so you guys sort of answered these, but if you have anything to add to them, you can. The first one was, what was your biggest challenge in the application process, and how did you overcome it? And any of you guys can answer it if you want.
I can answer because I definitely think this is something to think about. Kind of, Palmer already touched on it. He applied places where like his application really fit. I, on the other hand, applied places where my application the first time around did not fit because I was geographically trying to get within a certain place. And so I was set, I'm from Ohio, so I was set on, okay, I want to be in the Midwest, preferably Ohio. And Phil had applied because we applied my second time at the same time he applied. And so Ohio was our goal. Now, if you know Ohio, you know, like OSU, like those are very high ranking schools. They have a lot of Case Western high ranking schools. So they're wanting like 518s on average. So if you've got a 506, probably not. I mean, not to say it can't happen, but one thing to think about is being realistic about your application. Shoot for the stars, of course, but also know at the end of the day, the most important thing is you being a doctor, and school choice doesn't matter as much as you think it does once you start applying. You realize that really quick. Like I used to say, I'd never go there. And then I was like, please take me. So don't be so, what's the word? You're just tunnel vision. Don't have tunnel vision. Definitely be flexible with the school choices and realistic. And so that was my biggest, I was geographically kind of confined, which I definitely think didn't help me. So when you guys are applying, try to be very realistic with the application. Oh, Phil, did you have anything?
I think like the biggest challenge for my application process as far as like switching over from uh, the med school route to the PA route, which I'll actually make a correction to what I said. I said like my life changed junior year and then I applied senior year. That all happened senior year, and then I kind of took like a mini gap year, like half gap year, and then applied after senior year. So with the time frame correction there. But the biggest challenge was writing like the personal statement for PA school, because I wasn't always like gunning for PA school the whole time. And I knew it's what I wanted to do, but I wanted to find a good way to convey that in a personal statement, and that was like difficult to do. But then I basically got really good advice from the PAs that I shadowed, and I talked to them. And he said, basically, just tell them the truth. He's like, tell them that you wanted to go to med school, but like, here's the reasons why you changed, and be honest about that in your application, and be honest about that in your interview. And so I did, and that made it a little bit easier. But yeah, changing that mindset of, because you can't just be like, oh, here's my personal statement, I want to help people. It's like everybody wants to help people. That's a lame personal statement. You can't write that. And I actually initially went that route, and then someone read it and they're like, this is terrible. Trash, throw it away, write a new personal statement. I'm like, oh man. So that was difficult.
I'll agree to that. Personal statements are so hard. They're so hard for me. We had the prep class that we had to take, and we had to write our personal statement. Mine was so bad. I ended up just like, I submitted it, I got a grade for it, and then for my actual application, I scrapped that entire thing and wrote everything from scratch. It was so hard to like convey in a good way that makes you stand out from everyone else. Like, oh, you want to help people, good job, great, pat on the back. So it's really hard. You have to really like delve in yourself and like really think about like, all right, how can I convey this in a way that will make me stand out and make it be a good thing. So I really struggled with personal statement. Personally was really hard. And then one of the things I had to face, I faced in an interview that I had to like overcome, which didn't prepare myself well enough for. Is when I did dual enrollment, I took physics, and I ended up with like a C in that class. And I had during one interview, one of the interviewing rooms at that school's job was to just drill you on academics. This dude for like 15 minutes just drilled me on why in the world I made a C on physics, and how I expected to do. I was like, well, if you look at every other thing on my application, you'll see that's the outlier. But if you do have, don't worry if you have those. Just have a good answer. Have a good answer for why you have those struggles. It's a great way to paint it as this was a challenge that I overcame. And so that was another one that I had to like face and come up with like good answers to. And yeah, personal statement definitely was. Make sure you give yourself a lot of time. That way, for the personal statement, that way you can make sure it's a good personal statement, because personal statements are good attention grabbers, and schools can really lean on those to help set yourself apart from other people.
Okay, we have a couple of like underclassmen in like the room right now. Are you guys able to explain a little bit of the process as well as personal statement, just so that you know like what you're referring to when you're referring personal statement, interviews? Are you able to just walk through that just a little bit for both med school and PA school?
Yeah.
Oh,
I guess.
You can do the med school one, Palmer.
Yeah. So for med school, you have the two options. You can go the DO route or the MD school route. They both have their different challenges, and they have two different application portals that you have to go through. So you can equally apply to both, and you just have to fill out all the same things that you've done multiple times. And so that will open up sometime in June, right? I want to say. When does it open to first start filling out?
AMCAS opens first week of May. Like
Okay.
You can start filling it out. And then, but you can't submit it, I believe, until last week of May, first week of June.
Yeah. So you pretty much have a month to fill that out, and you do that for both the AMCAS and for the ACOP, the DO school application. And so pretty much they ask for a ton of preliminary information, as well as a personal statement there. And that's pretty much a paragraph of you explaining why you want to go to medical school, what makes them want to accept you into their school. And so you fill that out. And then, as I said, at the end of May, it opens up. And so you'll put your schools, the school choice that you want to apply to, and the website will send your application to all of those schools, as well as the personal statement, which goes along with the application. So they go hand in hand, the personal statement as well as the actual application, where you have to like put your like name, your family relationships, your social security, all the stuff to prove that you are who you are. And then the schools will look at those, and if they see that you met the like minimum academic requirements, if they like your personal statement, they'll then send you what's called a secondary. And so that's where they send their own questions to you and essays that they want you to fill out. That way they can get a better feel for who you are. And so a lot of the questions will then be more directed towards who they are as a medical school, what their values are and beliefs are. And I've had some wild ones that I've had to fill out. One of them, I had to handwrite it and fax it to them. And others some have their own websites designed for it. Some they just like, here, write this on Word and then send it to us. So every school has their own different system set up for how they want you to send their secondaries. And then you'll send the secondaries. And if they really like what you did with how you respond to those answers, then they'll invite you to do an interview. And that's kind of like the last stretch of like, this is your last chance to make a great impression to the school for them to then accept you. Did I miss anything, Hope, on that?
I think you pretty much have it all. As far as where the MCAT fits in and all of that.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the MCAT.
Because the unfortunate thing about the MCAT is like you have to study for it. And there's like no time in school to study for the MCAT, but then like you go to all these like websites like Med School HQ or whatever, and they're like, yeah, you got to take it by early June if you really want to be competitive. Like, I get out of school in May, take early June. So MCAT, when to take it is really difficult. And it's kind of it would probably be best to work that out with one of the Spencers. Just looking at where you are academically. And it is a very different kind of test. It's not like any test you get at PCC because it's very standardized. A lot of weird questions that I kind of just ended up guessing on. If I'm being honest, a lot of them I'm like, that sounds the most right. But it is a very taxing test. So for instance, I took it, I think you took yours, Palmer, in June, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I also took the first time in June, and the second time I also took it the year after in June. And I studied 5 weeks the first time, 3 weeks the second time. I will say, I don't know, the second time I had taken cell bio in between like the first and second time, cell bio and immunology and calculus. And I don't know why, and I tell everyone this that I've talked to, for some reason, between the first year and the second year taking the MCAT, it was like I was a different person psychologically. If you can this is a little plug for Dr. Spencer, take immunology. It will change your life. I tell you this. I am not even kidding you. It will change your life. You will think like an academic. So take immunology. Cell biology with Dr. Alvarez if he's still teaching that. And you have to take cell biology, molecular biology. That was it. And then you take calculus. You guys are different. Like after calculus, I felt different. Like those classes, be like, how's that going to help me on the MCAT? There's nothing on the MCAT that covers immunology and molecular biology, but reading those textbooks 100% will prepare you for the MCAT because it's like the most dry you could ever have, and you're just like really grasping, and that's what the MCAT's like. So, but the thing that people sometimes don't realize in the MCAT, though, I'm going somewhere, I promise. You can apply before your MCAT scores come back, and you can also apply before you take your MCAT. You just have to realize that your MCAT scores have to be into the school most of the time before they look at your application. So if you're like, you know what, I'm ready to apply in June, like my application's done, I'm taking my MCAT in July. It'll take a month from the time you take it to the time the scores come back. And so August, they'll get your application and they'll open it if that's their policy. But the only caveat to that is if you don't have your MCAT score back yet, you don't know how good you did. And if you don't know how good you did, it's really hard to gauge what schools most fit your profile. So that's the only caveat. And sorry, a lot of info. It takes 6 to 8 weeks for them to process your application once you turn it in. So if you turn it in early June, your application will go through typically by sometime in July. But if you wait until August to submit your application, that can be the upper end of those 8 weeks. So just once you submit your application, it doesn't mean your application goes straight to the school. They actually have to verify. It's stupid. They have to hand verify your transcript, which is in this day and age, the dumbest thing in the world because AI can do that in like 3 seconds. But yeah, I digress. Okay.
As far as personal statement goes for PA school, I'm gonna blow your guys' mind. It's identical. Everything they said, CASPA is identical. Personal statement is like a 5,000 word character limit. They give you a prompt. It's usually something along the lines, a fancier way of saying, hey, why do you want to go to PA school? And then, yeah, you'll just respond to that prompt. Some schools on CASPA will actually have additional essays you'll fill out on CASPA that will go to them individually.
Is that akin to like a secondary?
It's no, because then you also get secondaries from PA school. They like to make you do it right. But yeah, you'll have one big primary application with 1,000 different identifiers and information about you, your personal statement, either your PA CAT scores or your GRE scores. That will go to all the schools, and then the schools have the opportunity to send you back a secondary, which a lot of those will have essays for you to fill out before they decide to give you an interview. Or some of them will be really simple because like the school's like, we don't care. We already liked your personal statement. So just make sure you're the right person. Here, fill out all the same information again. So the 2 pieces of advice that I would give about the application process as far as PA school goes, and this might be true for med school too, a lot of the application is really busy work. So like Hope said, you don't need to have your tests in before you start working on it. So maybe just start getting some of that busy work knocked out as soon as it opens up. Because I'm like, oh man, I have to verify like my employment. I don't remember what that boss's name was or what that place was or something like that. Or like, I don't even know what that number is. And they're like, hey, find this number, find this address, find these people for references or describe this activity that you did. I'm like, so a lot of busy work involved with that. So if you can get on that and get that knocked out. And then the other thing is make sure that all of your applications have the same email address. Because if you have different email addresses, you can get into a lot of trouble when secondaries start rolling around. I'm not saying that I did that, but I totally did that.
Are you talking about your PCC address?
I had the PCC address and then I had a personal email address.
Also, your PCC address doesn't stay with you for like the rest of your life, and they will cut you off, and then you'll be like, dude, my Starbucks app was hooked up to this. I can't verify it's me. So like, yeah, just a note.
So it gets really confusing between like the secondaries and between like CASPA and everything. And I think they accidentally auto-built like the wrong email address into Toledo's application. I'm like, why haven't they sent me back a secondary? Everyone else has. And then I opened up my personal email. It was buried in there somewhere. And they're like, hey, fill out the secondary. It's due in like a week. I'm like, oh man, okay. So make sure you have the same email addresses. Get your busy work done. And then work really hard on the personal statement. A lot of times for the personal statements, the prompts are available like online or like you have an idea of what it is, or you can just open it up early. Like
I know on at least the MD side of things, and Palmer would have to verify for DO, but if you go to SDN, Student Doctor Net or whatever, and you look up secondary responses, you can actually, because your secondaries won't come back until your application's been verified. And like I said, it could take 6 to 8 weeks. And then your MCAT score has to be received as well. So you have like 6 to 8 weeks where you're just kind of like chilling. And you can start pre-writing secondary essays. So by going to SDN, you can find each school's secondary essays and you can start pre-writing. Also give yourself a break because you just did something really hard. But if you want to pre-write too, go for it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys for that. That was very insightful. The next question that we have is kind of like a two-part.
You guys kind of answered a little bit of this by speaking to like, oh, PCC really prepares you well. But in like what specific ways does it prepare you well? And is it harder to get into med school from PCC as far as accreditation and connections to extracurricular type of things? And then also how to get extracurricular, whether it's like research or clinical or shadowing experiences while you're here at PCC, and maybe some of the things that you did while in undergrad.
Yeah, I can talk to. Yeah, I guess I'll start. So, so first for I guess how PCC prepares us is one. I mean, believe it or not, PC is pretty academically rigorous. It definitely prepares you from. I mean, no one can fully prepare you, I guess, for the water hose of information that is medical school, but you do get you have a lot more information to learn. But on the flip side, you have a lot more time to learn this stuff because we don't have so many extra things going on in medical school. Oh, hey kitty. So that's one thing in how PC, because they're rigorous and we have a lot of things going on and we still have to get good grades at PCC while balancing all those things. You're coming into medical school and only having to study, that kind of makes life a lot easier, honestly. That's from like my perspective. I tell people all the time that like honestly undergrad was harder and they think I'm crazy, but it honestly was because the amount of things we had to both juggle while getting good grades was crazy. So from that aspect, PCC does very well. And again, they prepare you academically well. I didn't like the first class we did was like micro, as well as biochemistry / molecular biology, kind of all in one class. So I mean, those were like the most current classes I had taken at PCC. So I already felt like I didn't feel like I was behind. It was honestly like the first few weeks were review for medical school. So they do a really good job at PCC at preparing you for that transition. As far as being accredited and stuff, I never had that pop up. No one once ever questioned my undergrad or questioned academically the school or the reputation. Yeah, so as far as like people questioning like going to Pensacola Christian College, I never had any trouble with that whatsoever. Plug for Liberty though, Liberty likes it. Liberty likes PCC students, so in that way it can help you. There's currently 5 or 6 of us from Pensacola who are at LUCOM. So there's a good percentage of PCC people there. So that way it does help you. And I guess the last part was how to get plugged in for I guess doctors and stuff or shadowing. So I really struggled with this. So like I didn't know any doctors or anybody that I could like reach out to, and I was like, this is time where I kind of need to get some shadowing hours. And so I ended up actually just cold calling people, honestly. Cold calling people, and then my brother, I have a twin brother, and he also got into medical school as well. He's at Mercer University in Georgia. He hooked me up with a DO doctor because for applying to DO medical school, you have to have a DO recommendation letter because it's kind of like it's not the same as applying to PA school, but they want to know why you chose DO over an MD pathway. So I mean, if you can't find the connections, ask people around you. I mean, I'm so sure there's other pre-meds who have connections. And then also, if you have to cold call people, I mean, because you do have to get those recommendations and those hours for that.
Oh, has our mic been on this whole time?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry about our cat, guys. Her name is Loaf. She likes being in our presence a lot. So as far as like research and stuff go, I know that, I mean, I didn't do any of the summer programs or whatever, but I have known pre-meds and or pre-health majors who have done those summer programs. I think you'd be surprised because I did work in a research lab during my undergrad. That was not undergrad, what am I saying? Master's. That was one of the key things as part of the program. You had 10 months of research experience. And my PI would literally take almost anyone, PI being like the boss of my lab. And so it kind of made me realize like PIs are a little bit more open. Some, I mean, if you're looking undergrad students, they're open to basically anyone, especially if you're hardworking. So maybe the universities near your hometowns try reaching out to the coordinators for their research programs and see if they're willing to just take someone from a different undergrad. I don't know if it'll be successful. I mean, it always depends on the place near you, but that is something you could try looking into and just cold emailing. That's how a lot of undergrad within those same campuses where research institutions are, that's how they reach out to PIs. So I don't see why it would be any different for you guys. Another thing is something else I didn't realize, a lot of hospitals, part of their volunteer services, they have to where pre-med students, you have to get like a PPD, so like tuberculin testing or whatever, but you can get that from your health department. You have that, and then like you show, I can't remember what the other requirements are, and I'm sure they're different across the board. But if you have those things, a lot of hospital systems have a program where you can go in and they will give you shadowing. Some require a sponsor. So, I mean, when you go home or before you go home for like summer break or winter break, I would check the big hospital systems near you within their volunteer services department, because they might have an option for pre-med students or like educational observation hours, stuff like that. And it's not a crazy amount of hours, but it's something. And if anything, it's a way for you to get connected to a doctor. I didn't even have a family doctor. So like, I didn't know who I was going to shadow. So like that can be very helpful as far as getting your foot in the door. I did a lot of service at school. I had a lot of extracurriculars. I'm assuming, can someone answer this as like you guys? Is Overflow still going on, the Bible study?
Still going on.
I was one of the Overflow, like I wasn't the founder, obviously, but I was one of the like original leaders for Overflow. So that was one of my like things. So I was very involved in that Christian service. Kind of with my collegian, I was like a secretary. And just a few other things. So those helped, I think, as far as just giving me some different experiences. Definitely whenever a hurricane comes around, volunteer for cleanup, guys. That looks, not just because it looks cool in an application, but it's a really good experience to help people. I don't know if you guys have had a hurricane recently or during a school year, but it's a great volunteering opportunity. Or if they have groups that go like an hour or so either direction where a hurricane occurs, volunteer, because that's such a cool experience. And you can talk about it too during your interviews. I think I talked about hurricane relief during every single one of my interviews. I say that I had 2 interviews. But it's a great opportunity. So I did that too. I don't think anyone, in my experience, and I know in Phil's experience, no one questioned PCC. They might be like, oh, I've never heard of that place, but no one questioned the academic validity of PCC. I mean, has it happened before? I'm sure, probably, but like as far as UT, it's an MD school, it's a state institution. No one said anything to us. And in fact, Phil is like the top of his PA class, like the absolute top. And so I think just being where we are academically, it's almost like a good thing for like the representation of PCC, because it shows, wow, these are quality students that this institution has put out. Oh, one more thing. PCC, genuinely, guys, we're not just saying this. We are so prepared for med school, PA school. Like, I was genuinely shocked, and I wrote this in my alumni evaluation, but like genuinely shocked to see how well we were prepared. And not just like academically, but like even just, this sounds so corny, okay? And I don't know if Palmer feels the same way, because I wouldn't say I was an ite or anything like that, obviously, but like Palmer's like, yeah. I follow rules, okay? But I genuinely, there are times when I really miss PCC, because like for me to find a Christian, I can find Christians on my campus, but it's like a needle in a haystack, it feels like. And there's not that camaraderie I just automatically felt with like anyone at PCC, and I really do miss that. But on the other side of things, it's a chance to be a light in a very dark place. So many of our classmates, the majority of them, have like no real understanding of their purpose. There's not, oh, I'm doing this because I want to glorify God and I know He's called me to this. They don't, a lot of my classmates don't, they're like, okay, yeah, I like medicine, then, you know, pays well. That's kind of why I'm here. And there's no root to that. And just one thing I want to like put across is like, don't underestimate how important this the spirituality that's just embedded in PCC is. I know sometimes it's annoying because you have to go to chapel and you have to go to church and all of those things, but it's so nice to look back and just remember how much purpose there was on campus. Like people were doing things because they loved God. That is a beautiful thing that I miss a lot. And so I know you're like, I hate this place, but like one day, hopefully you look back and you love it. And Phil, do you have anything to add?
No, I guess I don't know. You guys said everything. You guys talked a lot of that. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't a jab. I'm sorry. Yeah, PCC prepared me really well for PA school. The big thing about PA school that PCC kind of prepares you well for, PA school moves extremely fast. It's based on trying to cram, like take 3 years of med school and cram it into 2, but actually into 1. So you need to be on top of things. You need to be in your A game all the time, and you need to know a lot going in. They're expecting you to know a lot, and they're expecting you to teach yourself a lot. And I kind of like the no coddle mentality of PCC, where they didn't like hold your hand and guide you through.
They didn't give you PowerPoint slides. They still don't give you PowerPoint slides, right? I mean, you guys, they give you your slides like for lecture.
Oh, do they or do they?
Class, they won't usually send it to us.
Yeah, they won't send.
So like you can go on Canvas and like download the PowerPoint.
No.
See, you guys have no idea like how strong you are becoming. You have no idea, because if they don't upload the PowerPoint for either of our classes, we're like rioting in the streets. Like, where's the PowerPoint? We need to annotate. You guys are becoming so strong. That is. Oh my word. Okay, sorry. Go on.
Yeah. Med school is easy because they tell you exactly what you need to know.
Yes.
You just know the PowerPoint, and that's all you got to know.
You have to read the book at PCC, and I know it seems like a hindrance, but you're learning so much. And like, seriously, you guys are going to be like warriors walking into schools, because you're like, I read the book, fam. I know that. I'm using old lingo, but like, you'll be so strong. It's so underrated how strong you guys will be just because of that. So sorry, go on, Phil.
No, I'm good. I think I said everything. PCC's good.
Okay, awesome, guys. We love it too here. It's awesome. Just so we're looking to wrap it around 8, like officially, for like those of you guys who are in here. So we have like 2 more preset questions, and then like we can just like, if you guys had any specific questions for Hope, Phil, and Palmer. So the second to last question is more, it's kind of a good tie-in with Phil just talking about PA school. Kind of the differences between what an MD does, what a DO does, and what a PA does, like their scope of practice. kind of the big picture, years of training, and like just why you chose what you chose and the differences between them, just for clarification.
I can
I guess
start.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry.
Go for it.
Okay. I know not Dio. I know Palmer will probably just reiterate this as well. But like as far as what we learn, MD and DO are virtually the same, except for osteopathic muscle manipulation. That's like probably the only difference in our curriculum and the only difference in the entirety of our entire career choices and opportunities, because we do the same match, we take the same step. I think do you guys have a couple extra board exams? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, so the main difference is we can take the same step as y'all, but we do have our own steps. So
Okay.
it's taken at the same exact time, and we have to take them.
Okay.
So I will put this plug in at DO is if you do DO, you're doing the I guess the harder route in the sense that there's still bias towards DOs. In the sense that we do manipulations. We do a lot of, I guess the best way to say it is chiropractic techniques. So on the plus side, it's awesome because I go home and I can pop people's necks and backs and do some crazy cool stuff. On the flip side, people still see that as like you're doing voodoo in the hospital where we do science. But besides that, so we do take our own version of step because we have to get tested on those techniques that we learn. In fact, I just had that test today for my final for that class. And so so that's the big thing. We learn those techniques to apply a more hands-on approach. I guess more holistic is what DOs preach, more holistic approach to it. But academically wise and the things we learn the exact same things. We just have that extra stuff that our boards test us on as well. And so depending on where you want to go from a DO, if you want to be like a very competitive DO doctor going into residency, you then have to take both steps. So you'll take the DO step, and then a few weeks later, you'll take the MD step. So that can be brutal from a DO perspective. But if you're going somewhere like me, I'm doing like pediatrics, something not super competitive, you can just take the DO boards and be fine. You don't have to take both sets of steps.
And just to clarify for you guys, because I didn't know any of this, when I was at PC, STEP is just the big board exam you take after the first 2 years of medical school. So it tests you on the first 2 years, and then you'll take another one after your third year, and then you'll take another one after you're a resident, and the tests keep coming, and the money, and the jadedness. But yeah, from my standpoint, like I haven't come across too many like jerk classmates that have prejudice, but there definitely are prejudices, especially against DOs when it comes to older generations. But I think that's kind of dying out. And I mean, for instance, they just had a bunch of DOs come into my med school, so MD, and do like a workshop for OMM where they were showing, okay, what is it? How can you as an MD maybe get involved if you're interested after, you become a physician? So I think things are definitely changing. The reason I didn't do DO is because I think there's like one DO school in all of Ohio. And like I said, I was trying to get into Ohio somewhere. So, and I didn't want to do the extra paperwork for one school. That's the only reason. But really, if you're like, oh, well, people view me different, maybe if they're kind of ignorant, but I mean, those who like matter, they don't care. Like it's the same. And then Phil.
Okay, so as far as like PA training goes, a little bit of a history lesson. So the PA profession, I always give the history lesson because I had to learn this for all my interviews. I always ask this, like, what do you know about the history of the PA profession? So back in the 60s, they had all these like Navy corpsmen, Marine medics. And they said these guys are really good at like emergency medicine. And we don't have any doctors in rural communities. And so this guy, Eugene Stead, he said, hey, look, we've got this curriculum from World War II, the medical school curriculum that was basically able to take med school and cram it into 3 years. He said, let's cram that into 2 years, take these naval corpsmen, train them in 2 years, and call them physician associates. The AMA hated the name physician associates, said they have to be called assistant. They said, okay, we'll call them physician assistant, whatever. Train these 4 guys, and they train them at Duke University. And then beyond that, basically, they've been training more and more PAs. The next program opened up in Washington. And from the 60s on till today, basically, the PA profession was the idea of churning out highly trained, quickly trained, well-trained providers. A lot of people use the term mid-level, which I don't really care. I guess that's how we operate as a mid-level provider. As far as our education goes, most PA programs run for about 2 years, 2.5 years. Mine's 28 months. You're going to do around 110 credit hours for a master's degree, which is funny because your bachelor's degree is 120 credits. It is the most credit hours master's degree you can get. And that's because it doesn't make sense to have a doctorate of physician assistant studies. So they say keep it at a master's degree level, even though you're getting like 110 credits. Anyways, so basically what PA school will have is you'll have 2 parts of PA school. You have your didactic year, which is when they torture you in your classroom for about 4 semesters and cram medical knowledge down your throat until you're exhausted and throw up, and then they make you eat more. And it just doesn't stop. It's ridiculous. That's why you need to know a lot going in. And that's why I said PCC was good, because it gave me a great foundation for that. Once you're thoroughly sick of that and you've passed those 4 years, or the 4 semesters, but that year of didactic year, you'll move into clinical year where you'll have 9 core rotations, and like the core rotations like emergency med, surgery, internal med, obstetrics, family med, blah, blah, blah. Each one of those are 5 weeks long, and you'll have an inter-rotation exam at the end of each one of those that you must pass. If you don't pass that, you get one more chance to take it and you're kicked out. Yeah, PA school doesn't let you remediate. You have to have an 80% or higher in every class. They're kind of mean. I don't know why. I don't know. They haven't really changed since the 60s much. It's just like mean. I'm like, man, these are mean. Classes in PA school tend to be a lot smaller. So usually med schools are packing in like 100+ students per class. PA schools, and like a lot of students, big classes, 40 students, right? Most schools are running at like 20, 30 students. So it's very, very tight knit. I know the name and probably the addresses of every day in my class, which sounds creepy, but not actually, because you get really close with people. Once you've undergone all that torture, you can sit for the national exam called the PANTS, where then you can be certified as a BAC, physician assistant certified. And then you go to practice. As far as scope of practices for PAs, we don't have full practice autonomy. So that means we can't own our own practice. But within the realm of whatever like health institution or organization we're in, there's a lot of individual autonomy. Honestly, there's no point in having a PA if you have to look over the shoulder. So doctors don't have to sign off on PA's notes. Doctors don't have to sign off on our prescriptions. We can prescribe every single medication under the sun that a doctor can. We can do a lot of the basic procedures. The idea of a PA was we're designed to be in a physician extender, and we can handle about 80% of the workload and a lot of the bread and butter. What's awesome about it is that we get to do a lot of the sit down and education with patients, which is really what attracted me towards PA, because when I went and shadowed PAs, I got to see that the PA at the endocrinology clinic that I worked at, he took all the diabetic patients because he was able to spend like 45 minutes with every single diabetic patient and like explain the disease processes and such, and really just like go into detail on like diet plans and talking to them about like what other medication options they had. So yeah, you get to do a lot as a PA. It's pretty awesome. And there isn't a lot of limitations. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you don't have full practice of autonomy. That means a lot for some people. For me, I don't really care, because I just plan to like go work for, you know, whoever will hire me, and I don't really care, and I'll gain as much as autonomy as I want. What is really cool about PA is that we're not forced to specialize in anything. So even as a nurse practitioner, you're forced to pick specialty, either like pediatrics, geriatrics, psych, family med, something like that. PAs don't have to do that. We basically get what they call onboarding. So after our horrible education experience, and we get out, we finally get hired, we beg to get hired by somebody. They'll onboard us for around 3 to 6 months. And essentially what that is that that's an old curmudgeon doctor who takes you under his wing, and he's like, this is the way you actually do medicine, my son. And he teaches you all of his tricks of the trades to do about 80% of the work so that you can act as an extended. Why? It's not because a PA is trying to take the job of the doctor. And I'm not out here to say that and be like, oh, we're just that's stupid. That's stupid. It's not about that. It's about the fact that like he has so much more experience doing more complex things, so he doesn't need to handle the basic sore throat call. I can handle that though. I can figure out how to run the test for strep. I can figure out the necessity for antibiotics. I can listen to someone's lungs. I can work them up for non-specific respiratory infections. And like I said, do a lot of the bread and butter stuff. So I would say that's pretty much the scope of practice of PAs and the education of PAs in a nutshell. A lot of talking.
Thank you guys so much. We have one more question, but we'll see. Does anybody have a question like in the audience for that?
Matt. That is Matt.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can you guys talk just a little bit about what life outside of the classroom looks like? So Palmer, obviously, you're not married like Phil and Hope are, so you're gonna have a little different perspective. But I'd love to hear a little bit of both. Both the married perspective, but also the unmarried perspective. What is the kind of stuff that you do outside of class time when you have to rest in your life?
Could you guys say that okay?
And yeah, and just to repeat the question, just for like, because we're recording, so I'm going to repeat it closer. The question is just kind of outside the classroom, how is the lifestyle comparative to Hope and Phil? You guys are married, and whereas Palmer, you're not. So just kind of the contrast between that.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. So, I mean, it first depends on who you are going into medical school. There's so many different people and how they respond to medical school and the stress of medical school. So you have some people who they do not leave the library. They like meal prep like one day, and then they are studying nonstop every day, all day, every day. And so those people, they don't do anything outside fun. We have the way our school works. At least second year, we have a test every single Monday. So every single weekend you're studying. So it depends on the person. I'm very much, I feel like I've been blessed with a lot of free time. So I just go and do hobbies. I play a lot of disc golf. I also like joined the Liberty's table tennis team. But we don't like go and travel a ton. So that's why I can do it. So there's a lot of them where I'm just like, I chose Liberty because there are so many things that you can do. You're part of the huge university that is Liberty. So there's a lot of extracurricular activities that you can do and get involved in, should you have the time. Now, obviously, academics come first and foremost, but it is very important too. I think the one thing that has helped me with medical school is because PCC was so rigorous in time management. I know how much time I need to study. Therefore, I know how much free time I can have. And so that way I can have free time. So I think that's something that's huge. What's setting up from other people who think they have to study nonstop to get like the ultimate like passing grade. And some people do. But knowing how much free time and utilizing that free time is what keeps you going, keep you from burning out. And it's very important to utilize that freedom. And as a single person, I don't necessarily have to focus on making sure I'm like spending time with other people. Now, making sure you're keeping your family relationship is super important. Those are the people that keep you grounded. But yeah, that's what I do. I'm living my best life, going and having fun when I'm not studying. So that's my answer.
So we study like a lot. We're more like the first people that Palmer talked about. Especially Phil. Like Phil is like insane, like never stops, wouldn't sleep if it was a possibility, but like I make him
Make me sound great.
but he also, like I said, he does really well in school. And the difference is his program isn't pass fail, is very grade oriented, and they don't give you really second chances for a lot of PA schools. Ours, well, his being one of them. For mine, it looks a lot different as far as academics goes. It's pass fail. And so I don't think about it that way because I'm just not that type of person. But a lot of my classmates, I have heard classmates literally say, oh yeah, I don't study on the weekends. I'm like, who are you? Do you know where you are right now? But then I don't feel like that's a very realistic thing to think, especially if you want to do decently well. But as far as our relationship, it helps that we're both in school because we do spend a lot of time studying with each other, especially now that I'm in med school rather than my master's program. I do a lot of, oh, hey, did you know this? And he says, did you know that? And we go back and forth with what I'm learning, and it's actually a review for him. So it's helpful in that sense. And we take nights, I'd say probably once a week, if possible. So we like to go to movies. We like to cook at home. We do a lot of those things, and it helps if you can set aside a few hours every week just to be with each other. That helps the relationship side of things. And if your significant other isn't in school, I can see it being a lot harder because there's not that mutual understanding of, I know exactly where you are. I know how busy you are, how stressed you are, and the importance of you doing well. Not that it's not there, but it's harder to understand. So I'm sure that would be a lot harder, but we make it work. We study together. I make him go to coffee shops with me so we can pretend we're, having a date, but we're actually just, I'm doing Anki and he's going through PowerPoints. But yeah, we make the most out of the time we have. And communication is really key to it. Just being able to be like, hey, I'm not feeling, this way, and just kind of going back and forth with how we feel too, because it can be hard, especially if one person is like, I was in my master's and sometimes I'd pick up at home because I was like, hey, my work's not as hard, but then like sometimes there would be that feeling of like, Phil never does anything here. So if you have a significant other that is picking up a lot of the slack for you, sorry, Phil. I'm just being honest. I'm being vulnerable and real. If you have a significant other that's picking up, especially with kids at home, like that's a big stress. And obviously, if you're in school, it's hard to support your significant other in that. But at the same time, it's really good to find ways to do so, even if you don't have time. So like, I think it's a case-by-case basis, but it's possible and can thrive. So don't be scared of it. I think it can be a really good growth period too. So yeah. I
mean, as far as like anybody in the room if anybody in the room, I don't know if anybody does, if anybody wants to go to PA school, we always have a 2-word say, 2 years. 2 years. I can do anything for 2 years. And so you can gun as hard as you can for 2 years. It's okay. You can become a goal source when you get your first paycheck. It'll be all right. So you can do anything for 2 years. So yeah, I study a little bit too much sometimes. It keeps me really grounded in that.
And that is true too. It will be done.
Yeah.
And
it's like 2.5
it will be a little easier when he gets to working and stuff. So also student loans are a little difficult when you're alone versus living together. So I'm sure it's much harder for Palmer to live alone, unless he has some financial benefactor. But student loans do not give you very much, and there's no way to not use them without a financial benefactor. So being with someone who's also in school is actually pretty helpful because you combine and you share everything and housing costs and stuff like that. So on that side of things, it's very helpful financially.
Yeah. Financial aid life hack, get married. And
yeah, that's the life hack.
Double the money. Works.
Thank you.
Okay, are you guys like, how much time do you have? Do you have time for one more quick question if someone had one, or do you guys have to go? You good? Okay, did you?
So this builds off your comment about the finances. As a med student, especially if you're not working, how do you find and afford like housing, especially expecting right now? Like comparatively, like married and single.
So I'll just repeat the question again. I think Palmer mentioned it earlier. He had to quickly find an apartment, but he just wants to know, like, how do you find housing? How do you afford it? What is that situation when you're in med school / PhD?
Yeah, so mine was a little challenging because I got accepted so late into Liberty that I didn't have time to be a part of the early like getting added to the group chats. So a lot of times when you get accepted into schools, you'll end up getting put in a group chat or something that way you can connect with people. Liberty being the huge university it is, they have tons of Facebook groups that you. So I just hopped on Liberty Housing, a Facebook group where any students who are looking for housing can do that. And I was very blessed to find this place that was actually already fully furnished in Airbnb style, so I didn't have to worry about like finding like furniture and stuff. It was just moving ready. So I was very blessed from that. And you get your loans. Our school does it where you don't get your loans till like a month after you start medical school. But you do a early, you ask for an early release of loans, so they'll release $3,000 at the beginning of the semester for you to start off, but you don't get your full lump sum until like the end of the month. So you do have to pre-plan. So like I had to pre-plan like how much money I'm going to need from the end of December to like the 20 till the end of January. Already when I'm calculating how much loan money I'm going to take out. And you have to calculate because like I'm making zero money, so every money I use is solely from the government. So I have to think how much money will I need to spend on Christmas and stuff like that. And so you end up racking so much money in debt. It's crazy. But on the flip side, as far as being a doctor, a lot of studies show that like if you live frugally, if you live like a student, it is possible for med students to pay off their debt in 5 years. So it just depends on you live like a student during med school and you live like a student during residency. And while that debt looks awful, doctors at the end of the day do make a good bit of money. And so it makes it very reasonable to pay off the debt that you will accumulate unless you have someone who's nice enough to pay for your way through medical school. But I do not. So yeah, you really have to plan out and budget, which is something that I was never used to having to do. I mean, you had to do it a little bit in undergrad, but I was lucky enough to have parents who was paying for undergrad. But now with the loans, like it's solely like you start off with all the way our school, you start off with all the money that you're going to use for that semester. And so you have to know how you're going to use that home money for the entire semester. And so you really have to budget out what you're doing.
I have a lot of classmates, and so do you actually, who aren't married that have to live with other people. So living alone is really, unless you find like a tiny apartment and you're in like a lower income city, like, I mean, Toledo is a very low income city. You think there'd be a lot more housing that's cheap, but those places you don't really want to live because like gun violence. So that's one thing to think about too. Safety is important. So I don't know. It's, if you're not married, it can be very difficult financially finding housing, and a lot of times, at least from the people I see in my classes, they do have to live like either in houses that they share with roommates, or I know people that do, it's not necessarily dorm style because dorms there, you have like a bunk bed in a room, but it's more like you have your own room and then there's a common space you all share. And a lot of times I've seen like you can join undergrad housing at those, if the institution has an undergrad, you can join the housing, or they'll have graduate housing with the undergrad. So that's always an option, but it's still pricey. So you'll probably have to live with people if you're not married. We do budget quite a bit. If you can get some sort of, I know it sounds like, but like if you can get some sort of government assistance for food, I know a lot of people do that. We always take out our max loans, even if we're not going to use it, because you don't know if you're going to need to use it. Theoretically, you can always take out more later, but there's a max you get. and things can go wrong sometimes. But yeah, it's tight. It's really, really tight. But having a significant other or having roommates is really helpful. Even sharing groceries is helpful. So it's possible though. Don't let us scare you.
We just give a round of applause, just like for the.
We like really appreciate the fact that you guys did this. Like, you have no idea how much this means, like, us as officers, that this worked out and you guys were willing to do this. I don't know, you can't see who I am, but my name's Anna. Palmer, I didn't know you during your undergrad, but I did know who Phil and Hope were. And so Phil, you were vice president of the pre-med club at one point, weren't you? So that was my freshman year. And then Hope was actually in at least one of my classes. And both of them were the type of people that walked around campus. And one, they just had that, they were always kind to the people around them. And they were the type of people you could approach and ask questions. So my encouragement to you is they are great examples of how to just live a life that's different, like your and how to stand out. And I'm sure Palmer too, I just didn't personally